In this episode, I talk with Brian Holley, former director of the Naples Botanical Garden in Florida. We talk about horticulture therapy and saving endangered plant species. At the end, I talk about 9 flower essences that we collected at the garden. Welcome to the Flower Lounge, a place for conversations with wildly creative people and a little plant-loving wisdom to help you experience life in full bloom. I'm Katie Hess, flower alchemist and founder of LOTUSWEI, and I believe in a world where we're all living at our personal edge. Hi, Brian. Thank you so much for doing this interview in the Naples Botanical Garden.
Oh, we're glad you're here, Katie. It's really fun.
It's so beautiful. This is one of my favorite places. I always come here when I come to Naples. And I just wanted to ask you, what do people most report when they walk out of here? What do people get from being here?
Boy, that's a great question. There's several things. One is the interaction with the dozens of volunteers. As you can tell, there's a lot of people in this garden. And people have always got questions. And we have this amazing core of volunteer docents who are really, really well trained and really interested in communicating with our visitors. So that's one thing. And then the other thing that I see a lot, I think people appreciate design. They appreciate the fact that these gardens are really designed by artists, and there is certainly an artfulness to the gardens in a way that you don't often see at botanical gardens. Historically, botanical gardens were always arranged taxonomically by the type of plant, so you'd see collections of roses or crab apples or lilacs or whatever it was. And we really took that concept and said there's no reason we have to arrange things taxonomically to incorporate our collections. We can incorporate them into design. So that's what we did.
And you built this from ground up, you were telling me.
Yeah, we actually were able to hire the design team. It was during Hurricane Wilma. I was doing 2 jobs. I was still director in Cleveland at the same time as I was here. And I realized very early on, as Wilma was approaching, I wasn't going to get any work done for a long time. So I decided I cut the last flight out of Fort Lauderdale back to Cleveland. But I was on Naples Times sitting in Cleveland, so I started researching tropical garden designers and started contacting them. And without exception, they were all really interested in working on this project. So we're able to, at that point, I guess, get 5 different landscape architects and then the architecture firms. So really 6 design firms working together.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what are you working on now? What's the future?
Well, it's going to be interesting, Katie. We're opening the new visitor center. It'll open October 23rd. So it's going to take a year to get that operating well. So to get the menus perfect in the cafe and to get the, everything, the time ticketing, all the things that we need to do, it's going to take a year to kind of get that balanced out. And then we're going to start working on a 20-year master plan.
Wow.
And I really would like that master plan to incorporate, look at how we're going to grow programmatically, what kind of education programs are we going to be doing, what kind of wellness programs are we going to be doing, what kind of school programs are we going to be doing, what kind of research. Really take all those things and project what we're going to be like in 20 years as much as we can, and then anticipate what our needs are going to be for gardens and for facilities and start to plan those things. So we've got a really thoughtful process to follow over the next decade or 2.
I noticed that you're using eco-designers as well for the new space.
Yeah. One of our staff is restoration ecologist, Chad Washburn. So he's been incredibly critical to this design. I rely on Chad a lot to make sure that when we design natural spaces, those natural spaces have integrity and they're not just sort of slopped together. And he's really passionate too, and he's very involved. Yeah, so I've really relied on Chad, both in terms of developing natural landscapes, but also helping with removing exotic species, invasive species. It's hard to believe this whole site was just covered in Melaleuca, which is an invasive Australian tree. So removing those, dealing with them in the natural areas, dealing with other invasives like Brazilian pepper, he's really taken the lead on that and done a fantastic job. So anyway, yes, that's where integrity comes for creating natural areas.
Awesome. So what are some of your favorite flowers or some of the highlights when you think about your favorites on the property? What are some of the things that you usually point out to people?
My favorites are whatever I've seen that day.
Right.
So, it's interesting. We're sitting here and we're talking about the rain. There's this beautiful tree with incredibly beautiful bark, a rainbow gum from Australia. So right now, seeing and looking at that, that's definitely one of my favorites right now.
Right.
But I get fascinated by things. We have something, right now, even the roses here are really looking beautiful in the idea garden. So they're kind of charming me right now. It's not an unusual or exotic flower, but, and then we were looking at something called Medmea a few minutes ago, this beautiful truss of pink flowers. And then you and I were over at the visitor center, and we were looking at those beautiful vines that were growing over there, the clock vine. So when I see those things, they really resonate with me. And then I worked a lot with Madagascan plants. So some of the plants in the cactus and succulent garden are kind of plants that I'm familiar with and really, really love from working in that context with the Pachypodiums and Didierrias and Aloadias and all these kind of iconic baobabs, all these iconic Madagascan plants that, I've seen them growing in situ. So when it kind of makes you feel great when you actually see them here. So,
wow.
Anyway, there's a lot of triggers as to why I like plants, and you know that as well as I do.
So if you were to close your eyes and think of any flower or plant that pops in your mind, what would be the first one that jumps in your mind?
Okay, well, I'm going to close my eyes and see what happens. Actually, it's interesting. It's a blanket flower. It's a native wildflower called Gaillardia, which has bright orange flowers. It's growing in the meadow over here in the Florida garden. So,
and if you were going to describe that flower's personality in 3 words, how would you describe its personality?
Very, very cheerful.
Cool.
And that's exactly what it is. You can't not, and they call it blanket flower because it actually had the colors of some of the early blankets that traders would sell. But it's just a plant. You can't look at it. If you look at it, you have to smile.
Oh, the one that's like a daisy.
Yeah, it is
with
like
all
a daisy.
the different colors on the inside.
Yeah, exactly, rings and rings.
Yellow and pink
exactly.
Yeah.
And the other nice thing is it grows here in Florida. It's native here in Florida, but it's also native up in Ontario and Ohio, other places I've lived. So familiarity sometimes is a nice thing.
So people today are really, really busy, more and more busy as time goes on, moving at a faster pace, needing a digital detox. What do you think the role of botanical gardens is in creating like a refuge for people on that level?
It's interesting, Katie, because you're absolutely right. It's become a more and more significant role for botanical gardens. And we see that even in our programming. 10 years ago, nobody had yoga programs in botanical gardens, or Tai Chi, or journaling, or we have a walking club now. And I actually see us moving more and more in that direction. It's one of the reasons I was interested in meeting yourself is I think this utilizing plants to really change the way people's moods are, to really help to de-stress them, to really create a context that allows them to cut loose a little bit and to really meditate or just lose themselves in the beauty of plants or the landscape.
Right.
And one of the things we actually have, I don't know if you've seen it yet, we actually have hammocks in the Caribbean garden.
Yeah.
And they're set in this kind of sandy area underneath some coconut palms. And I go out there, sometimes I'll be wandering around on a Sunday afternoon and you look over there and there'll be people just swinging away, just completely lost. They're probably half asleep drooling, which is not a bad state to be in.
Yeah, it's like allowing people to just be, right?
Yes.
And they don't have to think or do or be somebody. It's just coming back to that, who they were when they were kids, just swinging in the hammock.
Yeah, swinging in the hammock, exactly.
Discovering cool flowers
look at the clouds
and
go
trees.
by and watch it, exactly, looking up instead of down, which is always a good thing.
So how do we do that more? How do we promote that, and how do we promote botanical gardens to more people, not just plant lovers by nature, but to everyone as a form of relaxation?
Well, one of the things that we've tried to do is do really diverse types of programming. So, we bring jazz bands in, we bring tribute bands in. I think this next week we've got the Rolling Stones tribute band coming in. That may not exactly be something you're going to meditate to, but then we've got the Lego exhibit going on right now. So trying to do things that people who don't necessarily like gardens may come to the garden to see something else. And then when they come, they realize, what a wonderful place it can be to spend some time. And I can't tell you, I always look at our TripAdvisor things, and I can't tell you how many times I've seen guides post on there, I don't like gardens, but I went to this garden with my girlfriend. She made me, and I had a great time. And so anything we could do to leverage that, we people can walk. We have 3 days a week when people can walk their dogs in the garden. So it's just different kinds of things like that to try to get them to sample the experience, and then once they do, hopefully they'll come back.
Mm-hmm. Very nice. Do you have any questions that you wish I would ask you?
Most of my adult life, so I think that sort of set the stage for that.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, I'll never forget my very first presentation I did as a professional. And actually, interestingly, it was on ethnobotany. And this poor garden club, I had about 160 slides. I talked for 2.5 hours.
They were like...
I was so worried about being complete and, knowledgeable that I had to put every single thing I ever learned into one slide presentation. It was perfect. I mean, they just had to be dying. So, as you do this more and more, you get to be a lot more comfortable with it. And try not to communicate at quite the same length as I used to. Actually, the funny thing, one day I was talking to the History of Medicine Museum volunteers in Toronto. This is in the old days when you had the clicker, carousel slide projectors, and I forgot my clicker, and this lady, it was after lunch, and they had wine with lunch.
Yeah.
This lady offered to click for me. So I'm sitting there, and I've got about 20 slides, and I said, next slide, please, and nothing happened. And I said, could you please have the next slide? Nothing happened.
Uh-huh.
After I said, please, would you change to the next slide? And the person next to her said, she's asleep.
No!
So,
Really?
Yeah. So you never know what you're going to have happen when you're doing this kind of stuff.
Oh, that's so funny.
It was pretty hilarious. The woman was so embarrassed. I felt so badly for her. Anyway.
Wow, that's a great story. What else was I going to ask you? I was going to ask, every plant lover has got some sort of something they boast about that's really rare, or something unique, or something you're working on, or different. What are some of the things that pop out to you?
Yeah, I think here at the garden, there's a couple of things. There's 3 things. Mm-hmm. I'll say 3 things.
Okay.
Because I could probably go 20, but the 3 things would be, we're now the national collection for plumeria, which is also called frangipani, or the lay plant. That's a huge thing for a young garden like us to get that kind of recognition. Uh-huh. And we have about 500 different cultivars of plumerias.
Wow.
So I'm really proud of that. I'm really proud of our emphasis on native plants, and we're getting really close relationships with different natural history entities like Fakahatchee Strand, where they're looking to us now to help with conservation initiatives and to be an ex situ place for storing some of those things.
Wow.
So I'm really proud of that. And then the final thing that's exciting to me is the orchid collection that we're developing. Part of the new building, the new visitor center, is going to be an orchid garden, and we have a new associate director of horticulture, Nick Avey, who's a real orchid. He used to work with the American Orchid Society, so he's really creating a knowledge. He's got a great knowledge base to create a wonderful collection of orchids. So one of the things we're talking about is the black orchid. That's something I'd never seen before, and so all those things are things that, as a plant nerd, I have to love. So, yeah.
So for the lay people, what is Fakahatchee?
Yeah, the Fakahatchee Strand is right on the western edge of the Everglades, and it's actually a wooded, kind of a wet woods is probably be the best description for it.
Okay.
And it's actually the orchid capital of North America. There's more orchid diversity there than any place else in the world.
Wow.
And that's actually where, if you ever heard about the book The Orchid Thief, or watched the movie adaptation, that's where it was actually filmed.
Oh,
and
wow.
the ranger that's in the book and the movie is still there. His name's Mike Owen. He's a great guy.
You're kidding me.
No, I'm serious.
Wow.
And they still have ghost orchids there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's Fakahatchee Strand.
So it's this strip of land where different plants grow, and you're holding some of those species here, or caring for them?
Because so many of them are really rare. They really want other places that can kind of propagate them and hold them and care for them, so that if they get destroyed in the strand, there'll be a backup genetic material to replace them.
Right.
So,
okay.
yeah.
And today we're making a flower remedy of a couple different flowers, one being the black bat flower.
Yes.
Anything you can tell us about that flower?
It's sort of ephemeral. I've had very difficult time once they're flowered to keep them going. I think they're really difficult to keep going. It's in the yam family, so it's really closely related to like sweet potatoes and things like that.
Uh-huh.
And other than that, it's got a certain sort of crazy, sinister look to it, so it'll be interesting to see how it all turns out.
How about the crimson, is it crimson spider lily?
Oh, I just think they're magnificent. I've actually have those in my own garden as well, and there's a very, they're called, the genus is Crinum, and the crimson one is actually, I believe it's from China, it's certainly from Oriental or Asian. Mm-hmm. Well, we actually have native spider lilies here in Florida as well with white flowers. Oh. And you'd be driving along through the Everglades, some places where you have kind of these flat, dry areas that are starting to dry out, and you'll see they'll just be popping white everywhere with the spider lilies. So they're special. I really like them a lot.
And the shaving brush?
Oh, shaving brush tree?
Yeah.
Sure. It's actually, believe it or not, it's hard to believe when you look at the flower, but it's really closely related to hibiscus.
Oh, wow.
It's in the same family, Malvaceae. And it's funny, it's ephemeral. It, like many of the plants that are related to it, it drops all of its leaves, and so there's nothing to get in the way of these crazy flowers. So its pollinators, which are probably bats and moths, because typically it comes into flower at night, come in and they can see it loud and clear, these flowers. Then once the flowers are done, it starts to form fruit, and it leaves out again and becomes green and kind of normal again. But it's fun to see them when they're so stark and covered with those flowers.
Yeah, right next door there's another tree that loses all its leaves, and it was so stunning because you just see these gorgeous, huge yellow flowers, but no leaves.
Oh, you know what? That's the double buttercup.
Double buttercup.
Yeah, that's what that is. And those are stunning. And a matter of fact, if you lift one of those flowers, most flowers don't have any weight. You know, even if you have a rose or something like that, it's just they're so light. Doesn't feel like anything. That thing weighs about a quarter of a pound. I mean, it's like really has substance to it. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And yeah, they're all beautiful flowers.
Oh, and being from Phoenix, I'm always, looking at the different wetlands, wondering if there are alligators roaming. Do you have alligators here in the lake?
We do sporadically, yes. Yeah. And we've got, it's interesting coming from up north, because up north we don't have any significant issues with rattlesnakes, alligators, panthers. And we have a 42-page document that we just completed on wildlife protocols and policies and procedures to how we deal with the various wildlife that are down here.
Coming from outside of Florida, to me, it seems a little freaky to go near water where there might be alligators, but it seems like most people here, they're not afraid. The alligators keep to themselves.
Well,
as long as you
people
stay
are
out of
foolish not to be afraid. I mean, you should always be afraid. Alligators can move very, very quickly, and pretty much every year we hear about somebody being hurt by an alligator. 2 years ago, a lady had her arm taken off by an alligator in Everglades City. So they're wildlife. They're not. You can't anticipate what they're going to do, and to not be cautious is really a mistake. You really need to be careful with these things, because they can do real harm.
But only when you're in their area, right?
Yeah, exactly. And if you just have reasonable caution, you don't, like, you see some people think that they see them non-animate and they stay so still, they don't think they're real. They think they're like sculptures of alligators. So, people will take their 3-year-old and decide to take a picture on the back of the sculpture of an alligator when it's a real alligator. I mean, So, yeah, it was funny because I had friends in recently, and actually my nephew was in, and we were actually at Fakahatchee Strand.
Yes.
And where we parked, we were walking over, and he noticed this alligator, and he thought it was a sculpture. He didn't say anything about it. We did a walk for about an hour, got all the way back, and the alligator was sitting there exactly the same. And I said, no, that's a real alligator.
Right.
Yeah, so they can't fake it.
Oof.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm really impressed with the amount of people coming in. I mean, just sitting here doing the interview, we've seen how many garden clubs and how many children, school groups. How many organizations and groups of people do you think you open the gardens to a month, a year?
Well, this year we'll probably have, 120 to 130,000 visitors. And school groups, I know every available schedule opportunity is full.
Wow.
So it's thousands and thousands of school kids, and I love it. I mean, to walk through the gardens and hear the kids laughing and having a great time. One of the groups that we're really proud of, one of the types of programs we're really proud of, are the programs we do in therapeutic horticulture. So we work with the Collier school system to work with kids with special needs, young adults out of the high schools, and we're doing a vocational training program with the kids. They come every week, and we actually just hired a special education teacher to work on those programs. And then we work with the Alzheimer's Network. We do programs with both caregivers as well as folks with Alzheimer's. And then we work with Lighthouse, which is a group that works with people with visual challenges. So, and because gardening and all the things that we've kind of talked about, all of the sensory aspects of working with plants, the pleasure that comes from propagating plants or making things from plants. I mean, everybody, no matter what your ability is, can really benefit from those kind of opportunities. So,
And that's what you're talking about when you say therapeutic horticulture.
exactly, yeah. Yeah, it's not taking care of your African violet. It's actually using the African violet to help somebody else.
Right. I saw a woman here earlier, and she was cutting out a huge, gorgeous cabbage from the garden,
Sure.
and she was bringing it to like a homeless shelter or
Yeah,
somewhere.
exactly. St. Matthew's House is a homeless shelter food bank that's a couple miles from here. So most of the produce that we grow on site goes to the shelter, and some of it we use in programming here as well. But yeah, it's a nice partnership with St. Matthew's.
You really give back to the community.
Well, we try to anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Brian. For
Oh,
having
you're
us.
welcome. It's my pleasure, Katie.
I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Brian Holley. I've been a huge fan of his work for years and grateful that he allowed us to collect flower essences from the garden. I wanted to talk about the 9 flower essences that we've collected from Naples because there's some really special flowers. One of the main reasons we sought out the garden was for the Jade Vine flower, which is super rare. Only grows in botanical gardens, and then in the wild it only grows in the Philippines and possibly Hawaii. It's one of the only plants in the world that looks like the color of jade or turquoise and indigo. And this flower is for when you feel hypersensitive to the world around you. Like, for example, if you don't want to go to an event because you actually have to engage with people and you feel like the outside world is a bit overwhelming and you just want to hide. So this flower helps you feel like you can freely engage with people without it affecting your energy. Another reason we went to Naples Botanical Garden specifically to seek out a rare flower is to collect the black bat flower. It's very sensitive. It only grows in tropical areas, the equator, and it's a fussy plant. It doesn't grow very easily. And this Naples Botanical Garden was really good at growing it. It's a crazy looking flower. It looks like it has bat wings, tiger whiskers, and eel parts. It's a pretty fierce looking flower, literally the color black or dark purple. And it's for when you go with the flow too often, when you're afraid of the power behind your own anger. And this flower helps you face your anger and channel ferocity into advocacy for yourself and others, and it helps you speak your mind. And it's an incredibly beautiful flower. It's also in our truth teller, if you've experienced that. One of the flowers that I've seen a lot of people be attracted to lately is called the clock vine. It's this beautiful bright orange and yellow, almost looks like a shoe, and they're hanging from a vine. And this flower's superpower is really about allowing you to have the freedom to reveal to yourself and others what's inside. If there's something that you haven't felt right about, but you haven't really wanted to look at or haven't allowed yourself to be vulnerable, Clockvine helps you courageously look at whatever it is that's not working in your life, reveal it to yourself, and in some way feel liberated and be able to make some really important changes in your life. The next flower we collected from the garden is one called Saraca, a big, bright, yellowy orange flower that grows on a tree. And this is the flower for when you feel like you're running out of time. Could be in life, if there's something you want to accomplish and you feel like you're running out of time. It's a really helpful elixir for when you're caretaking someone that you love or a pet that's close to death and you have that sensation that there's just not enough time and that time's running out. This elixir gives you the sense that you have all the time in the world and just helps you stay really, really present in any situation that you feel like time is running out. Rose of Venezuela. This is a flower that looks like a huge red explosion that grows also in a tree. And this flower is for breakthroughs. It's for when people in your life have said, oh, you can't do that, or that's not possible, or what if this happens, or what if that happens? It helps you cut through others' programming of you that something can't be done. helps you not be influenced by others, and it helps you just act fearlessly, no matter what others think. Shower of Orchids is a fuzzy gray and pink flower. It's actually not an orchid. The name is a misnomer, but it's a beautiful flower. And it's for when you feel like you don't have a purpose or that you're undervalued or inadequate, this is the antidote. Or if you have a fear of aging or that you won't make the kind of impact you want to in life, it helps you experience a profound understanding of your value and your unique contribution in the world. And it helps you experience this sense that being is more powerful than doing. Another really fun flower that we collected at the garden is the red cup water lily. Huge, gorgeous, bright red water lily that grows at night. It's a night blooming lily. And this is when you feel unable to receive help, like somebody extends themselves to help you and you're like, no, I got it, I can do it. You try to do everything yourself and then you get depleted. Or you notice yourself hesitating or holding back. So this is the flower that enhances your ability to step into a bigger version of yourself, to embrace your leadership qualities, and to have a greater understanding of divine feminine and masculine. The last two flowers I have been seeing a lot of here. I'm actually doing this recording while I'm traveling throughout Taiwan. So I've seen these last two flowers a lot here. One is the giant spider lily. I'm seeing the white version here in Taiwan, but the version we collected is the purple one. And it's for lightening your load. It's when you have a really long to-do list that feels really heavy and burdensome. Life feels a bit like a struggle, or that you're overcomplicating things. And giant spider lily just makes everything feel really easy and light and simple. The last flower I wanted to talk about is the shell ginger. It's called shell ginger because it's before the flower blooms, they look like little white, gray, pink shells. And as soon as they open into their full bloom, the center has this explosion of fiery orange and yellow. And this flower is for imagination. It's for out of the box wild possibilities and being able to really see your vision into reality. It's great for any time you experience scarcity mindset or you feel influenced by others' limited way of thinking. Shell ginger really helps you break free from those limitations and really be able to see the path to expanding into the wildest possibility that you could dream of. So that's just a short compilation of the 9 flowers that we collected in the Naples Botanical Garden. Those are all available as elixirs on the LOTUSWEI website. Really, really appreciate you for listening to the Flower Lounge podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. Take care.
Thank you so much for listening to the Flower Lounge. I'm Katie Hess, and we'll be releasing a new podcast every Wednesday. If you like what you heard or you know someone who might be touched by our conversation, share it with them. And don't forget to subscribe. To find out what your favorite flowers mean about you, take the quiz at LOTUSWEI.com.